maybe next year we'll be in person, or some of us will. I guess we'll be losing a lot of y'all.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. We're live. We'll wait a few minutes. Um, just gonna wait. I'm looking to see. Lauren's not. Lauren, there she is.
I'm having. Oh, it's working today. What in the world?
Sarah will be here. Kristen, Carla.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Okay, we're just missing. It looks like maybe Carla. There's some people that said they were not going to be able to attend, so they aren't here. But George, if you'll mute yourself, we'll go ahead and get started. So just a reminder, we are live.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is our last meeting of this school year. It's good to see everybody today. I guess we could go through the agenda and kind of begin. It's kind of interesting because it begins my last meeting of my last term, and so it's kind of cool. But I guess I'll save any reflection for when we have group share out at the end. But first off on the agenda is just to approve today's agenda. If you take a quick look at that, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right. I guess we could just type in the chat. Whether you approve, just type yes, and that'll be good. All right, looks like we have an agenda. Next thing on our agenda is the nomination of officers for 2021-2022. The nominations committee brings forth for the nomination for secretary, Felicia Lohman Sykes, for vice chair, Melanie Lichtenstein, and for chair, Corey Williams. Is there any discussion of our slate of officers or any nominations that we wish to consider at this time?
We'll actually vote on them at the next meeting.
All right. So that is a presentation of our slate of officers that will be voted on at the next meeting. Cool. Moving right along, Dr. Donna Poland with the Department of Education report and updates.
Sorry. It's been 6 years for a lot of people, and I really hate to see them go. But George, Dr. George, congratulations. Yes. He will be leaving us along with Sarah Haywood and my buddy Dorn, Dr. Dorn. I hear I got 2 doctors over the last 6 years. Wow. Also, Rodney Berry couldn't be with us today, but he served with us for 3 years. Carol Carter, and she's not with us today either, but she served with us for 3 years. And then another close buddy of mine, Laura Kelly. Gonna miss you too. And
I'm going to miss this group so much.
Through thick and thin, Kirsten Maloney. And really sorry to see all of y'all go. We will see Kimberly return. Yay. For another 3 years. And Corey, our nominated chair, will return as well. So yay. So we got some returning, but we're actually losing a lot of long-term time members. And usually I hand out a certificate, but and we aren't even printing them anymore. So you'll have to get electronic one. Sorry about that. We lost our kind of printing department, and so we're not printing certificates and things like that anymore. That's kind of interesting, not having a printing department, but everything's electronic. So I think we all need to give everybody a round of applause for either 3 or 6 years they've served, which is a long time. And a lot's been accomplished during that time as well. So thank you. So department updates, and I guess probably the major one is going to be the regulations. We worked hard on those regulations. It's been really more than just 2 years compilation because of all the legwork we did regarding programs and diversity in the years prior to that. You know, we used a lot of that information as well. But yesterday, the board officially withdrew the regulations back. So we'll be starting over again. They will be reviewed, and I'm not sure how the board is structuring that review process. It could be an outside vendor. It could be a committee they put together. But certainly, I think any of you or any organization or anyone listening can send a letter, or comment to the board. You'll need to go to the Board of Education's website to be able to comment, but you can send a comment regarding the regulations to the board or any insights you might wish to provide. Those are certainly options at this point. And I wish I could give you a better feel of what was going to happen, but I cannot. I know that there's one component that was discussed was the issue of more information in there about academic year governor schools, and I'm not, really sure that's the correct legal place for those programs because they are governed by code under joint and regional schools. They're not governed by the gifted regulations. And so I'm not exactly sure what will be put into the gifted regulations with regard to academic year governor schools. You know, I'm sure the governor school directors are all aware that the regulations were pulled back for this particular reason. And so they have their own comments and things that they will be doing with the board to deal with those issues. Like I said, they kind of an update. They have been meeting, so and I'm sure they will continue to meet with regard to this issue in terms of the regulations and their governance and their policies and procedures and things that they're required to do and submit to the board. On another front, the summer residential governor school programs are moving forward, and I'm happy to report that some of those will be in person. It's kind of bittersweet because we did take people from last year who were sophomores last year and juniors this year as automatic accepts if they wanted to return. And we did have quite a bit that wanted to return, and therefore it kind of limited the open positions that were available this year to any student that applied. And quite surprisingly, we had our regular number of applications, which I thought applications would be really down, but they weren't. They were the regular number of applications. And on top of that, some of the programs actually reduced their numbers in order to support students coming in person. And so they rather have, you know, last year they opted not to do a virtual component because it felt like they couldn't really represent the program virtually. So it was either don't have the program this year or reduce the numbers and at least have some kids come in person. And so they did do that. And so that again, even limited more numbers of new students that could actually be accepted. There was a couple of our programs in visual and performing arts where we took only like one new student because the returning students filled up all the spots because the numbers had been reduced. So the actual humanities program went from 150 to 100, and the visual and performing arts program, it's usually at 250, went to 150. So that program went from 400 to 250. And like I said, a lot of the smaller components like dance, you know, we just took a few new students in dance, and I think one of them only took one new student just because the returning students from the prior year took up all the limited number of spots. Agriculture went from 100 students to 50. And our math science technology numbers stayed like they were at 160. The J Lab and the marine science program, both those programs are going virtually, and J Lab actually kept their numbers at 12, and the VIMS reduced their numbers to 4, from 6 to 4. But those two programs went virtually because the institutions did not want to have in-person minors in the facilities. And so that was more the result of the institutions than accommodations or anything like that. Whereas the other programs reduced their numbers due to trying to accommodate and house students. This was really more the result of facilities, and they wanted to go virtual. I was trying to see, I don't think I left out any program. Oh, medicine and health science. That was the result again of the institution. BCU and MCV decided that they were not going to house any summer programs at all this summer. So it wasn't just our program, it was any of their programs that they run for their, even some of their college students, you know. So they did not have any programs this summer. And so that program was canceled, and we did not even review applications or accept students for that program. So it's unfortunate, but MCV does a lot of stuff with the COVID, and they just felt like they were not in a position to house people on campus right yet. Any questions with regard, well, let me just update you with regard to the student acceptances. I did send those out through SurveyMonkey, again, like I'd done in the past. And certainly there's a lot of issues with that, in spite of the fact we asked students not to put their school address on there. They did. And so of course, all those did not go through. And unfortunately, they don't bounce in the system. They just don't go through. And so I don't know which ones they are. I mean, I can look and see, but I don't know. Every now and then some of them got through, but a lot of them didn't. And so I did have communications with coordinators. This morning at 8 o'clock, I actually sent reminders to anybody who has not responded yet, which they still have time till the 30th, just a reminder. And some of the people whose addresses I did have corrections for, I sent those out as well. So students should have kind of received an update. A lot of students have clicked through and looked at the survey, but not completed it. And it's maybe a decision with their parents they're trying to make, or they have another program they're waiting to hear about. But I do have I can see where people have clicked through, and the numbers are kind of low in terms of who hasn't clicked through. And I'm not sure why that is, if they never got the email. You know, every now and then the kids are like, oh, I forgot I put that email on there. So, you know, they put an email address on there, and then they don't go check it. So, but hopefully, you know, the word's getting out, and we've got all that. I've got replies. I've actually probably out of all those hundreds of students so far, I've only had 2 that are going to come, which is, I kind of anticipated that. You know, if I have some nieces and nephews that this is their senior year, and they are tired of being at home. So I kind of anticipated we may not get a whole lot of declines. Anyway, we did select some alternates, but not sure how many of them are going to get in. We'll see. The summer regional programs are getting geared up. A lot of them are going to be in person. A few of them are going to be virtual or in person, but smaller numbers. 3 of them are not going to operate, and it's 3 that are connected to community colleges. And I'm not sure why they have decided that, because there is another one that is going to operate, but Anyway, 3 of them will not operate, but those will be in operation at some level this summer, which is good because most of them, only 9 of 21 operated last summer. So this summer, what do we have? 19, 18 that are going to operate. So that'll be good. Give students something to look forward to this summer. And I don't know if Sarah or Dorn want to update us on organizations.
Sure. Dorn, you want to go first and then I can share for consortium? Or...
You can go first.
Okay, so we had our 4th and final virtual professional development for the gifted coordinators. So when I refer to the consortium, that's the group that's represented by the gifted coordinator for each school division. In March, we had Dr. Scott Peters speak to everybody about norming and testing. And this week we had a group of 6 speakers that talked about misconceptions and myths that were sometimes associated with gifted research. So the board, the gifted board, will meet next week. And so I would anticipate that we would have a firm date for September. It will be virtual. It won't be in person yet, but we will meet next week and then we'll be able to send out a save the date for everybody.
So VA Gifted had a Carol Malik to speak for parents. I think we had over 220. It was free to parents and anybody else who wanted to. I think it was March 18th, and that was very successful. It was free to the parents, and we had like 400 people sign up, but registered for it. But 225 people showed up. Carol Malik is from Sing. She's a former, she's an SMPG facilitator, and a lot of people really enjoyed the talk. So it was so well received that we plan to do another one in June. And we don't know who we're going to get quite yet, but we are working on that. Also, we are planning for August the 3rd, 2021. We plan to have our VA Gifted virtual conference. We decided not to do our conference committee decided not to do face-to-face because we're really unsure about that. And we couldn't we were scheduled to do it at the homestead, but luckily, we got out of that contract. We just made some negotiations, and that worked in our favor because we were really concerned about people not showing up and then having this huge debt. What we're working on right now is to save the date and acquiring keynote speakers. We've got a good lineup. We are really closing in on that, and I don't want to share anything until we have it in stone in a contract. But we are using some of our former NAGC keynote speakers. Right now we are focusing on SEL and CRP equity because that's a huge topic for gifted. And we are determined to close gaps. And we need experts to help us to show us how to do that. So we're super excited about what's going to take place. But we have a lot of NAGC people that we're connected with and that we've contacted, and then they're willing to assist us in putting on a wonderful virtual conference. So more to come.
The conference this year for NAGC is still slated to be in person, as far as I know. And typically the National Organization of State Directors, it's called CSDPG for the acronym, Council of State Directors for Programs for the Gifted. We are going to have our conference virtually. Many of the state directors indicated that they didn't know if they'd be able to travel or not. And since we're such a small group, right now we only have 35 members, which is really good. It's more than we've had for quite some time. So anyway, we're excited, but we are going to have a virtual conference this year. And if there are any questions, if you want to chime in or raise your hand, or
Don, I had a question real quick about summer regional governor schools. And it's just more for my understanding of them. What kind of guidance are they given for, like for the programs from the VDOE? Is it more like, would you like to host and you design it, or are there specifications that they're given?
These programs were started some 30 years ago, and they have never had a funding increase.
Wow.
Yeah. So all these programs have been started for 30 some years. Some are funded, in the $5,000 range. Some are funded up to like 30,000, and they serve 400 or 500 students. So over the years, because either the divisions had to chip in more money or the programs had to rethink what they were going to offer or how long they were going to offer it or to how many kids. They have changed over the years. And the only new program that's come on board has been the Hanover Governor School for Technology. And that was funded separately through the General Assembly to support career and technical education. It has had to retool itself. It was a 3-week residential program housed at University of Richmond. And this year will be a 2-week residential program housed at Randolph-Macon. So it's kind of retooled for funding purposes. And basically they take kids who are top kids in different career and technical areas and bring them together for a kind of problem solving teamwork to look at issues surrounding business issues in the local area, and they work in teams to come up with a marketing plan and some different things like that. How they might use resources and things like that are in the area. And it's very problem solving, problem-based oriented program. And I had a chance to see it when I was at U of R the first year, and really impressive what the kids were doing. And it serves all the school divisions in regions 1 and 3. So it serves a lot of school divisions, but only, I think, 1 or 2 students from each division comes to the program. So it is a fairly small group of kids, and they might have limited it to only 1 student per division. I don't know. Haven't really had time to look into their new administrative procedures, but basically, I'd say if you are interested in trying to start a program, this is something that's got to start in the General Assembly with some funding, because they have not had an increase in 30 years. I kid you not. So, yeah. Other questions? Did I answer what you needed to know, George?
Yeah, I was just curious about a little bit about them, as they just, and I appreciate the history, actually. That was really cool to hear. I was curious, like, also of how much guidance they're given when they're restructuring, especially like with COVID and things like that, or is it more of just, are you operating and find a way to do it type of question? Like,
last year we gave them the option they could only operate virtually, and then this year we gave them the option they could do whatever they wanted to do, virtual or in person, but they had to follow the COVID guidelines, and then they submit administrative procedures with regard to that. But do I go back and say, oh, I don't like this little part, or I don't think this little part of your procedure's right? No, we don't monitor them that close. They are regional programs, and so they should have regional input.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a question, Donna. Do you have any insight on the World Language Academy's decision to go virtual?
No.
Okay.
I don't. I know I was asked the question, were all my programs going to go virtual? And I said, no, they aren't. But I don't know why world language is going.
Okay.
I will
Thank you.
say one thing I didn't update y'all on is that in May, I will start working with SurveyMonkey they are going to structure a whole application process for our summer residential programs where students can go online, click on application, complete it, submit it to their division or whoever is appointed as the point of contact for that division. And the application process will be all done virtually, and we won't have issues with emails. Hopefully, because students will be typing them in, so hopefully they won't type them in incorrectly. And if I can get them to build in a check on that in advance so that it'll come back and say, this email is not valid, something like that, that will be great. But yeah, everything will be done virtually. Divisions will have opportunities to review applications, select them, move them forward to the state, but it'll all be done online. Any other questions?
Yay.
Questions? No? Okay, back to you, George.
All right. So next thing on our agenda is just the planning for the annual report and the annual report and data strategic planning and the format for the annual report. That's the next thing on the agenda. Donna, did you have a method to go through this, or did you want Melanie to share a little bit about the documents that were mailed out? How do we want to approach this?
Well, I can share my screen and put it up there, or I've sent everyone a copy and we can go through line by line. I think really, there's a lot of things we've written about what we would like to see in terms of the data, but how it's represented, we need to kind of think through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a good one to be able to talk and type in the paperwork. So I have a copy myself, but do you think it would be helpful if I shared it on the screen and we just went through it? Or let Melanie share it, or somebody who wants to type in, they can type in, or I'm going to handwrite on mine so that I know, but I'm just not good at typing and talking and doing all that.
Yeah. Donna, if you can share it, I can scribe notes.
Oh, so just share the document and you'll do it separately, or you?
Yeah, because it's kind of cumbersome to write on a spreadsheet. So I'll put it in our initial document that I made on Google, and I'll just reshare that with the group, or send it to you and you can send it out so that the notes are there.
Okay, because I was just going to share a document that I saved on my desktop. So we'll be able to see it, but it's not the Google Doc.
Yeah, if you could just show in the screen the Excel doc so that, and then I'll just write down what people say.
Okay.
I'll do a backup note copy, Melanie.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheryl. And then Cheryl and I can combine our notes and we can send it to you, Donna, and then you can send it out to the whole group. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Let me. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good. So, for just to kind of go back over everything, we looked at different domains within the regulations where there was opportunities to highlight data where we could actually do it in a safe manner where it would be useful to the divisions but not disclose individual information. And so one of the things that we talked about was basically what these kinds of things would show the division. And then we talked about what were the exact codes and information that's being collected that we want to look at. And so we identified all of those. We made some comments to ourselves about what those might look like, or things we need to think about. For instance, in the referrals, we talked about the calculations that Donna Ford did for the acceptable range, so that if a population is 10% of the total population, do we have to see exactly 10% of the gifted population be that same exact number? And the answer is no, but it needs to be within a certain acceptable range. And Donna Ford's done a lot of work on that, as well as the OCR. And I'm going to learn more about that here shortly, next week. But anyway, when we look at that, we said, what does that mean for the annual report? So one of the things I left here is to compare referral data points over 3 years using a line graph, very specific. So we look at, just the referral numbers in a line graph. We can make a bar comparison for the current year of referrals by ethnicity against the division's population of ethnicity, so that they can see, for this year, here's our population ethnic breakdown of our school division, and here are our referrals. So this kind of gives us an opportunity to talk about what other things in terms of referrals would be helpful for the division to look at, in terms of some kind of visual representation. If you have something to say, just unmute yourself. I guess it's the way to do this. I don't know, George, if you have some other way you feels better.
No, I think that's, kind of doing it in a popcorn style, so to speak. really gets the spontaneous, suggestions as we go through and discuss. Like when you were discussing, I was thinking the power of just a simple pie graph for for comparison is such a visual, when you're just comparing it over our arching, referrals versus total population. And it would give, division.
A bar chart. I mean, a pie. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, just because it's a simple visual that you can place in front of like a school board that communicates immediately what's what, and just making sure that your shading is the same for each group and each graph, so that you can easily translate that. And then you can provide other detailed graphs, but many times when a school board presentation, they need, the intermediate view, not necessarily the detailed view of things.
I have a quick question. When we're looking at taking those numbers and making them a visual, for those school divisions who have very small groups of certain populations, on our yearly reports, a lot of times they just don't show because we have such a small number. So if it's less than this, you don't even see the numbers. So I'm concerned that if we already have a very small group, that's not going to show. But we still want to make sure that those percentages are equitable. Are we going to be able to see those smaller numbers in order to make it a visual? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And because I did a lot of work in my dissertation about that, I think we just need to say less than 10. They're not going to give you, because I forward you the information, they're not going to give you those numbers. So you just, as long as you indicate in your data and you're very explicit about that, and so that people will know, and you're very clear and concise in your wording, I think it'll be fine. Most people understand that.
Can I ask a question? The one piece that I'm having some difficulty with, as we're asking how to display the report, is that I'm not entirely sure for each of the measurement data's points, even with the comments, what our question is. So how we display data has a lot to do with what the question is that we're looking to answer. And so I don't know if we need an additional column that explicitly looks at what this data is going to represent so that we understand what the underlying question is. But I know as a layperson that's not in the midst of it like all of you in the same way, I need to know the question so I know what we're answering.
I agree. I think that would be helpful when we have to present this information to, say, parent advisory groups or school boards. They're not always versed in gifted ed. So I think they need to see a very clear, this is what this is going to indicate, and then here's the visual.
To piggyback off of Dara and Felicia, I started to think about that also and thought that maybe the donut chart with a question in the middle, maybe something that would be, excuse me, easier for a stakeholder to look at. And they could visualize just within that common sense. That was my initial thought.
Could that be something that would be included on like a guidance document?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say, something like a primer, or I wouldn't go so far as saying a dictionary, but just like terms that they might need to be able to understand, because we love to talk in the alphabet soup and they will have no idea what an IEP 504, GRP, GRT, any of that stuff is. you might need to have that in the guidance document so that they understand what it is that they're looking at, along with any questions that we're trying to pose, so that they can follow along and understand.
And sorry, Corey, that's a great
No, go ahead.
idea.
I was going to say too that I agree with any kind of guidance document, or I don't think a dictionary is insulting, but a lot of this information goes out ahead of school board meetings. And so if you want community support and you want the community to be able to understand, like, this is our population and this is our gifted population, and some of these things don't match, it needs to be very clear, because community support is going to be very important to make changes in a jurisdiction.
I was actually going to ask that when George was talking about using a pie graph, because or a circle graph. I was going to ask, are you talking about maybe just having two of those, like having one that says this is what our school division is composed of as far as all of the little groups, and then now this is what our gifted program is, you know, having them side by side.
And that really, and that's kind of what I was thinking, because if we make it so complicated, it's going to be very difficult for people who are wearing multiple hats to assemble this data and communicate it effectively. I think whatever we generate needs to be simple and like easily interpretable without anything else to support it, because like people are going to pull these graphs and put them on a school board presentation or a document, and that is going to be, you know, what is used. It's or even they might have this in a presentation and that is available to the public and to stakeholders, but people may not see the presentation, which would provide an interpretation. So then people are just using what they are seeing. That, you know, just something, you know, just a simple, like, it seems like we should have like multiple levels of reports where you have kind of like the VDOE website has for, you know, school divisions, where, you know, you click on it and there's this graph that pops up. And then if you want to go deeper to different populations, you click on the populations and it's like, you know, and it's simple and you can see like and interpret very quickly without any other research of like, okay, so this is our populations in this school and in this school. And I think something that is user-friendly and easy and quick to learn will also be something that is highly utilized and not underused, and that would be used more effectively, you know, throughout it, because we will have people accessing these reports from a variety of technology experience levels, even, gifted education training levels as well. And so I'm just thinking the simpler, the better, would be the way to go for the overarching things, the meat and potatoes. And then if we want to dig down deeper and provide, extra goodies for folks that, might be like more detailed reports, we could do that and get a little bit more detailed. But I'm just thinking to create a simple graph, you can have two side-by-side representations of your racial composition of your division and your gifted population or your gifted referrals. And you could even have three graphs, population, referrals, and then identify gifted or newly identified gifted. And then you could break that down and you could click a button and you could maybe look at your free or your disadvantaged status students. This is our population, disadvantaged and not disadvantaged. And this is our referrals. So it would be the same type of graph made in each scenario. And you would change the population you're looking at. So it's less to learn, and you're using something that people can readily look at, copy, paste, put in a presentation and interpret something. And then like I said, then we can get to the goodies of if we want to detail things, we could then provide additional detailed reports that you could go into. And just my thought, like, because I have a tendency to go complicated sometimes, and it just requires a lot of front loading with that. And I don't know if I don't know if we will have that opportunity to front load so much if a new tool was rolled out.
To add on to what George was saying, I was looking at the NAGC website, and Scott Peters has a video and a handout, and we could replicate. We don't have, I mean, he uses the RI, which is a representation index. We don't have to use that. We can use the 4, but it gives it a very simplified way to assist people, lay people, like people who are not in the work, to understand it. And so I put that in the chat so that you could look at that. We could use that as a maybe a template, so that we can, because I think everybody's doing videos now. So if we make it very easily accessible and explicit, and it's like it's very similar to what the Office of Civil Rights does. It's just this and that. We're not getting deep. It's just real simple. Not that people, you want to break it down so that they can have understanding. So I put that link in there if you're interested in looking at that. His video is really, I mean, he's articulated and, explains it really well. But if you need to slow it down, need a grasp, I mean, might as well leverage the technology. He presented at the NAGC Leadership Advocacy Conference and has a new article and some other resources out as well. And so, like, this is what he clearly has been working on for the past couple of years.
So one thing I do want to point out that we discussed way back is that, because it kind of goes back to looking at both the identified students and the referrals, where you're looking at student numbers, specifically, is going to percentages. And so that will help with not being able to see those low numbers, because it will become a percentage. And the other thing is, when we look at these graphs, and I got to look at what Doran just pointed out for Scott's, but when we were when I was thinking of a bar chart, was here's the division, and then here's like a little range finder, and here's the acceptable range given the calculation, and then here's where we are in terms of the referrals that year for that population of students. And it doesn't just have to be ethnicity. You can do the bar chart for all sorts of populations of students, and you would be using the percentage, acceptable percentage. So when you look at Scott's pie chart, maybe he has percentages on there, and there is some compensation made for, is this within the acceptable range? That's what I want to point out, because people are expecting it to be the exact same number. And we know that there should be more of an acceptable range, both high and low, around that. That's, it doesn't have to be exactly the same number.
Yeah.
So some divisions are doing a good job. They're within the acceptable range, but they're not exactly there. And so I think we need to make a point to say, when we look at any of these numbers and we're using that acceptable range, we need to be able to point that out, so that it's easily understood that there is an acceptable range of percentage, be it small, and where the division falls with regard to that. Am I right, Dorn?
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, but okay. We see you shaking your head. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, the document that I shared, there are a couple of apps that now exist online where you can visualize data. I don't know a lot about this because it's very new to me, but it gives a nice explanation, like how we can use what we actually teach with kids, like a box plot and things like that, that could really show like this is a goal and things like that. So it's and I like the idea of going in like a deeper dive, like what George was talking about. When we talk about the school review or the school, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but you can go deeper. You can look specifically at like the different socioeconomic groups or the different underserved groups, so that you're not becoming too getting lost in the weeds if it's new to you. Kirsten, you had your hand up for a while. I want to make sure that we hear what your recommendation was.
Well, I can't decide if it's helpful or not helpful. I mean, we struggled with our school board to have a similar thing, like when they have to balance out all the different information and all the different visuals, and then keep in mind ranges, which is where I think what I'm going to show you may or may not be helpful if you want to see it. But I can display, if you want, on the screen the way that we show it for our school board. In fact, just this morning I was asked to give the updated version of this so they could see it, but we do percent of subgroup. So all they see are percentages for our different levels of services, but they can look across the row and see, let's see if this will let me, yeah. I can display it if you want to just let me show it for a second. It might be easier to look at. It might be something that, because of all of our levels of services, it looks complicated when you first look at it, but it would just be as many rows as any particular division had for whatever levels of service they might have. But it shows.
Can I, I'll make you a co-host. Does that give you opportunity?
So I have a share screen, but I think because somebody's already sharing, it won't let me. I can't bump somebody off.
Right.
So can you see this now? Is this, okay. Is it big enough for what you're looking at? So this is complicated because we have all of our levels of services, 2, 3, and 4, and we also have local level 4. So you can see our level 4 is broken out into 2 different groups of those who've been through our central selection process and those who are school designated. But you get the idea, like if you were just to look at this top row, this is just our center program. So you can see 19% of our students in grades 3 through 8. So they take the total population and divide how many are in level 4 center eligible. And then you can see in the subgroups here where the gaps are. And so verbally we say, we're not looking to get the exact same number, but we certainly don't want a discrepancy of like 7% to 33%. That's not cool. And they get that, like that speaks their language. And then over here, we look at our L's, and we're constantly trying to make the message too about how, because L's exit out of services really quickly, it's going to be hard to capture like a very large number because they just exit out. That's part of their strengths oftentimes. So that's why we also show in the other areas as well. And then there are free and reduced meals and students with disabilities. And we also brought in the 504 plans because we know a lot of our twice exceptional students aren't going to have an IEP per se, but a lot of them do have a 504 plan. So down at the bottom, it does that for each level of service. And then down at the bottom, it combines all of our services. So you can kind of see who's accessing overall within our groups. So it kind of, I don't know if that's helpful or not helpful, but it has been very easy for our school board to digest it, I'll say.
Kirsten, do you have like an older copy or something in that so that we may be able to look at it a little closer? You don't have to give us the most recent data, whatever you're comfortable. If you
No, I actually, I'm going to have the most recent data soon, but I can send you this. I'll just send you these slides so you can see that. Yeah. Should I send it to Donna? Is that the best thing to do? Because this is all on our board docs. It's all public information.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I ask, Kirsten, is the reason why it's easy to digest one, because it's tabular, and so that's easy to look at. But what you just explained as you were describing the table is what made it easy to digest, right? So it was and I'm sure you meet with the board and you walk them through the table and you explain to them what the indicators mean and why this data is relevant and meaningful and useful. And as a table alone, to be honest, it's not going to do that job.
Okay. Yeah.
So the piece that's going to make it relevant and meaningful and useful is the narrative that is going to describe what it means. And so while I love the idea of guidance documents for certain pieces, I think that what we want is a standalone. And I love the idea that I'm hearing from people about comparison charts, because I think that's very meaningful. But I think that, you know, our descriptors are going to be really, really important. So as we're thinking about what we're reporting on and how we're reporting it, we have to really tell our story. And so that's where the question comes in and the narrative. So I just wanted to point that out again. From my late point, I looked at the chart and it meant nothing to me, but when you described it, I understood exactly what it meant. Does that make sense?
I think is it possible to kind of harness the opportunity of like people being more comfortable in online exploration of even like creating like a little explanation or narrative video, like a little talking head that can walk through, you know, welcome, you know, and I mean, I'm just thinking about like, you know, since we are having such a broad spectrum of people who can engage this data, it you know, the creating the same entry point where, and then letting people kind of go where they're comfortable might be the best route.
I would keep it simpler. I mean, decision makers, which is who you're displaying this for, anytime you're putting data out there, it's because you want people to make decisions based on your data. You want them to fund things. You want them to provide resources. And time is of the essence. And so as much as doing really cool stuff is cool, they're not going to spend the time. So I would just keep it all in a very clear space. And if you add additional resources on top of that, explanations, that sort of thing, I think that's great. But I would try to consider how we're going to collapse the information. It's a ton of information you guys are looking to include, and I'm sure it's all very meaningful and relevant. So making that as clear as possible in as little space as possible is my recommendation as somebody that has to make decisions all the time about how we're going to fund things, how we're going to do budgets, how we're going to make decisions, what programs are most important, what's critical, right? I just need that data. I need it clear. I need it explicit. I need to understand it from a viewpoint where I'm not the specialist in that area. So that's the things I want, you know, to make those suggestions as we're going ahead, because I love visuals. I think that's really critical, and I think that just has to have that clear question about what the visual is saying and the clear narrative that explains the visual.
To go along with that, maybe harnessing the power of some of the technology where there could be an explanation. If somebody wanted it, they could click on the link right there. Okay, so somebody can't remember what an IEP is. That is a hot link, and it has a short description, and it could be just a written description, or it could also have a narrative very quickly stated. So I'm noticing on other things that I've been working on that, you know, the target audience wants it right there, as Dara's saying. Yes, keep it simple, but you also have other stakeholders who have different levels of engagement. And you could have the banker, you could have the insurance person, and so that way they feel like the questions that they have are answered there. My other thought, as Dara was explaining this, it might be worthy in quote an introductory slide, if that's how it's going to come out, that it has those decision tree questions. Where does our division stand in comparison to the last 3 years? where do we stand in relationship to our region? So, and that could be just on one with hyperlinks that sublink, just
that
sharing what came to mind.
Cheryl, that made me think of, I guess, I don't know if it's in there are a number of apps, and I'm just thinking about when I just did my taxes, you can hover over a little eye and it just gives you a definition. And I'm wondering, I mean, these are for people who are a lot more technically capable. And Donna, is the State Department still engaged in having a group working with us to visualize this?
I was going to kind of go back to that.
Okay.
So right now, this information or what limited information the annual report encompasses is provided through SSWS, and it pulls from the division's end of year report student information that they upload. That won't change in terms of the fact that it's going to pull information from end of year report. It's going to be accessible through SSWS, although some of this may be, because the board is considering this, some of this may be part of the report card for school division, and it may be something that's accessible on the state website for the data that you can call down for a division. But what we're talking about doing is something that is taking the information, and instead of SSWS printing it out with a bunch of numbers in different categories like it does now, it's going to pull the information and put it into the format we request. And whether that is through SSWS or it has to be uploaded into a different program from SSWS, I don't know, because an outside vendor is going to be working with all that. I must say that I haven't been involved in any meetings where we've been looking at technology like we were right before all the COVID stuff hit. So I'm not sure exactly what the vendor can do for us, in SSWS and not. Like a lot of the things y'all are talking about are awesome, but they may not be doable in the program that we have. Like, hovering over something where it pops up, the definition of this. I mean, that's great, but I don't know if that's something we can do. And it might be that, the bar chart or the pie chart, those kinds of things are just the basic, what it's going to spit out. You might be able to pull from those things, copy and paste to create your own document that you're going to submit to the board. But then, the annual report itself is something that's public information, so it'd be available to the public, and it has to be shared that way. But it might be that you're going to add some additional stuff, for your board or whatever. I don't know, but the annual report's going to have a certain look, and all of them are going to pretty much be the same. And so I think, when we're thinking about things, it's going to be some basic information, and it's going to be back to those things that Dara asked. What are the questions that we're trying to answer? And one would be like, what were the referrals this year? How does that compare to prior years? Which might lend itself to, do we need to do more professional development to get the referrals? Are referrals dwindling down? Why is that? So you could ask yourself that question. So you could see that over 3 years. But you can also see, in the populations of students we have, who's getting referred most often. what, in terms of the number of referrals that come in and how does that compare to our current population? Just some basic questions that you're going to ask yourself about referrals. That's what's going to show up on the annual report. And how you do, right now there's opportunities for gifted coordinators to go into SSWS and pull down some additional information, because they are given the opportunity to click that they want to see the low numbers. And I don't know, Felicia, if you just click yes and leave everything like it is, you won't see the low numbers. But as a gifted coordinator, you can go in there and see the low numbers yourself. But when you present to the public, because they are raw numbers, you cannot. But we'll be working with percentages, and so that will be kind of different, and you'll be able to see those.
I think even when you have a small percentage of a subgroup in your school division, it's still important to make certain that these students are being equitably referred and equitably identified, even though that population is smaller. And that's the case for us, and it's the case for a lot of divisions in Region 7. And I feel like if we're not able to see those percentages, then everything that we've discussed as a group becomes a moot point, because our smaller divisions, we wouldn't be able to see that information, and it wouldn't be helpful. So even though it's a tiny percentage, it's still important, and it's still powerful for the students who make up that percentage. And I feel like we need to make certain that we don't forget that we have that represented.
Yeah, and I don't see where there's an issue representing the percentage. It's just the raw numbers.
I think the decisions around how we're going to represent this might be dependent on if we know what either the company or the vendor is capable of doing.
And they might be able to offer some suggestions that too, in terms of this is better. So we're not getting very far on our goals today.
No, because they would probably even know what, kind of graph or shape or visual representation would be better anyway. You said you haven't been engaged in those conversations because of COVID. Are you aware if they're happening or not right now, or was that on hold?
I'm sure they were under contract, so I'm sure they're doing some things. I just have not been made aware of those conversations. So I'll reach out to my boss to see if I can find out more about this.
I think that's going to be critical moving forward.
Yeah, and I think like even, just taking the recommendations that we've gotten today, like perhaps going back to the original statement around like what questions we're trying to answer, if we have those, and then if we were to get an opportunity to meet with a vendor or Don, we could give them to you, Donna, and you could say, this is the data we have, these are the questions we want to answer, you're the experts, tell us how to do it.
That's certainly maybe a way to go here.
Okay.
And I would think that in this time period, that some of these vendors have really upped their game just because of so many organizations and entities having to communicate online.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, as I'm seeing questions popping up in the chat, I wonder if this document is solid enough that it provides basically what we are looking to represent in, visually and make public. I wonder if that if this is, fleshed out enough for like what is realistically accomplishable at this point, through the software. So that, because I think Melanie made the point of like, it's going to be the software that really dictates how we're going to be able to best display this data, even if we want it displayed a certain way.
And maybe the guidance documents are more of templates, that maybe there could be some templates that someone could add in that particular link. Well, oh, I have this particular graph, like what Kristen was saying, and saying, well, gee, I really need to include this for my people, and they would be readily available.
So we have about, well, we don't have to use the 15 minutes, but I'm just trying to think how to move forward or do anything today, what we might do, and have everyone look at this document because it was sent to you, and think about what questions, when you go back to kind of the main summary of indicators, what questions we need to answer. I know some things are written in our comments, but maybe adding a column where we can, you can send it to Melanie or Cheryl, and you can combine that over the next week to say, hey, here's some questions that we want to answer when we look at the referrals. Are we seeing increases or decreases over the years? What's the change over the years? That kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be great. We could just add that in, and then Donna, you could go to the techie folks.
Yeah. Be very specific though when you send something, like, okay, for row number 5, identification talent development program, this is what we'd like to see. This is the question we need to address in that area. So be very specific when you send that Melanie or Cheryl the information, and what that question would be. We'll just add a comment in there.
And then we could gather those together and see what the clusters are and send them back to you.
Would it be beneficial, and this is, I don't know what work is going to occur on this over the summer, but would it be beneficial to maybe get a subcommittee together of like people who and then meet on each one of these briefly during the summer? So we've got between now until the next meeting, and then you have like 30 minutes or 30 or 45 minutes with that subcommittee that's just discussing referrals, so that you can hash that out and get that done. And then maybe you meet a week and a half later and hash out the identification piece, because I think each one of these is its own separate kind of entity and requires a lot of details to be discussed, and that might be more efficient in tackling it. And then you have that document to start next year with the new year. Just a thought. I didn't know what was going to happen over the summer, if the development was going to start or whatnot, but that might be a way to use that time, just quick meetings over the summer to really get that deep dive look of what do we need to know and what do we need to communicate to whomever does the data stuff, so that we give them clear specifications, because like data people don't necessarily live in the gifted world. And so we're going to have to explain to them, like, no, you need to take X and Y and tell us the difference between the two. And so that might be a benefit of just sporadic meetings over between now and the next meeting, to get that, just to throw that out there, just a thought.
I like that idea. However, I think there's a lot of interim steps to deal with the questions and the company that might be doing the work for us and that kind of thing, and get that laid out right so that maybe we have some of those things addressed by the first meeting of the year. And the first meeting hopefully will be in person and we can work in subgroups to when we have a little bit more time and tackle, you know, this subgroup's going to tackle referrals, and here's the representation modes that are available to us, and what would you like to see specifically come out of that? You know, I think knowing a little bit more, because once we kind of have an idea of, you know, these are things that we want and we want them represented, and here's the question we want to answer, it's just be a matter of turning it over. So I think, you know, there may be 2 more meetings where we kind of do the deeper, you know, very specifics, where we have something that we could present to a vendor. I mean, I might be wrong on that, but we have a lot of stuff here. We kind of have ideas of what needs to be represented. It's just some of these questions need to be answered by different groups of people before we can move forward. And then once we, you know, we have lots of the codes already and stuff like that. So I mean, I might be mistaken, but I don't see where there's going to be a whole lot left to do in terms of just giving information to someone else to come up with a document for us to review and look at, you know, a pretend kind of document.
Do you, and this, you know, going back to the revisit of the regulations, do you foresee that there's going to be any sort of additional data expected to be collected around the changes that the board may be seeking?
I have no idea what those changes are.
Okay.
And so I have no idea if there'll be any additional data, but we can certainly, you know, revisit that.
Okay.
In October timeframe. I think probably once we have an idea of what the annual report will look like, then writing the guidance document is going to be real important in terms of being able to communicate what is represented and how to interpret some of that data, and what you should be looking for. But for now, let's just have individually over the next week, if you can look at this, provide some insights, questions that you think the data should answer for the divisions. And then, and if there's something missing in any of these columns that you think needs to be added, certainly provide that comment, but be very specific as to which one of the rows you're dealing with, what questions you think should be kind of asked, answered in the representation of the data. And then, of course, if you have any additional comments or ideas or things that need to be added to the chart, please do that as well. I'll look into where we are in terms of the technology, and there's some issues that I need to touch base with our department that collects the data. Some of them have been out, and but they're back now, so I can certainly touch base with them and see if I can find out why some things are not there anymore, and how to go about adding some new things. Anything else that anyone would like to add? Okay, back to you, George.
All righty. Now we have move on to our next part of our agenda, the reports from members and representative groups. And did we want to go around first or address public comment first? Did anyone have any public comments submitted to you, Donna?
No.
Okay. So we have no public comments. And then if we want to go around and just members from reports, if you would like to pass, you can just say pass when we get to your name. This is a chance to just share briefly exciting developments. And then we also have, I believe Doran asked us to send her a quick email with the things so that she can make sure that everything is captured correctly in the minutes. So let's see. I'm gonna go to participants. And I'll just start here. Kirsten.
Yes.
Did you say pass? Sorry. Okay. Doran.
I'm thinking, like I'm writing and typing. I can't do that at the same time, George. Can you make me laugh?
I'll make you last. That sounds good. I'm just going down my list so I don't forget it. Oops, now everybody switched. Melanie.
I'll pass. Thank you.
Carla.
Pass.
Let's see. Dara, did you pass? I think. Did I see that in the chat?
Thank you.
Felicia.
I have a couple of things that I'm going to share, and Dorn, I'm actually typing this up in an email to you right now. Region 7, we are hosting an information session for our students who have been accepted to a summer residential program. Typically, we bring them to the Higher Education Center in Abingdon, and we have a day where they're able to go ahead and meet one another and speak with former participants in summer programs, and we're not able to do that. So we're doing an information session on Zoom. We'll have the students and their parents participate. We'll have students who attended a couple of years prior so they can answer some questions. And then we've also invited the directors of those governor school programs to participate. We normally have our Speaking for the Gifted conference in June. We have decided to forego that this summer, and we are doing online professional development trainings once a month starting in September. And we've planned September through December. There will be one teacher training and one administrator training every month, just throughout that first semester, so that we can keep gifted education on everyone's radar and provide helpful resources for those who are not only administering, administering those assessments for identification, to help those who are working with students in the classroom, and to help those who are administrators. So Dorn, I will type that up in something much more concise for you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Janin.
Pass.
All right, Kim.
I'll pass. Thanks.
Corey.
I put pass, but I also have here in the chat that I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve for another term. So looking forward to next year. Yay!
Thank you, Corey. Laura.
Region 6 is doing something very similar that Felicia just talked about for Region 7. We have several of us coordinators that are getting together to develop a PD for classroom teachers, gifted resource teachers, administrators, and putting it out there to the coordinators of all the different divisions in Region 6, and then they can tweak it to kind of curtail for their division itself. And so we're real excited about that. I actually was just working on that earlier this morning. As Corey just said, I am extremely sad. And as Donna said earlier, this has probably been one of the best groups I have ever been part of. And I am going to truly miss the collaboration between such great minds, and look forward to hearing what this group continues to work on. But these past 6 years have been phenomenal. So thank you all for touching my life for the last 6 years. And keep in touch.
And let's see, Melanie.
I'm going to pass.
And Roseanne.
I did want to report that up in Region 4, the Northern Virginia Council for Gifted Education has gifted coordinators and governor school directors up in our area. And we've been working with Shenandoah University to get some affordable cohorts organized so that teachers in our divisions can get gifted endorsement through Shenandoah University. I believe there is going to be a large cohort from the Fredericksburg area that I'm aware of, and also then some of the smaller divisions are putting together cohorts that may have 2 or 3 or 4 teachers from a variety of divisions. And Shenandoah is working with those divisions to make that happen. So I'm excited about that. I teach for Shenandoah also, so I'm going to be teaching some of those classes as well as being part of the Northern Virginia Council, which is helping facilitate it happen. So good news so far is getting more gifted endorsements in our area. Thanks.
And Sarah.
So Dorn, it's nothing to record. I'll tell you, Dr. Poland opened the meeting and I was like, oh, this is the last time we get to share. So what do I want to say with this last opportunity? So I was writing down a few notes. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, like Laura was saying, being a part of this committee has been one of the highlights of my career, and knowing that I had a small part and just a small impact by helping draft those regulations is very satisfying. So I'm hoping that they finally come to fruition next year. I was a little disappointed yesterday. Well, I was a lot disappointed yesterday, but I've learned so much from the work that we've done and the people I've met and the friendships that have been established. And, you know, we can't even measure those things. And so I've also got to add that in addition, we're really fortunate to work under Dr. Poland's leadership and guidance. And we're lucky to have her as an advocate for and an expert for our students in Virginia. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I think it's just Dorn and myself for last. I'll just quickly go and
you want me to go ahead and do it?
You ready?
Let you go. Yeah, I'm ready.
Right,
I wrote something down. I'm currently in BBCPS, George Mason University, and BBCPS is partnering on the Project eIgnite program that they have, and it's a way to we've identified 3 schools in our school, middle schools, to try to find another pathway using PBL to identify underrepresented populations in the culturally, linguistically, economically diverse students. So we're super excited about that venture, and I want to say, and that's just the only thing I'm going to say about that. That's one of the things. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with all of you. There's a lot of heart and passion and knowledge in the room. And it's great that it's great to come together with a group of people that really, truly understand the needs of gifted children, and they're not competing against one another. They just want to do what's best for gifted students and coordinators. It's not really about, because sometimes you can be in certain places and people are, you know, politics get involved and all that kind of stuff. But really, I feel like the heartbeat has been here, and it's really focused on what's best for students. I thank Donna for, I love how you do the work session, because you really are about the work and getting things accomplished and getting things done in a very professional manner. You're just like, if you're not here for the work, please, excuse yourself. This is not a status in an organization. This is, if you're about the work and you're really about the work, this is the place for you. So I've grown by leaps and bounds under this, meeting everybody and working with everyone and seeing the different perspectives. It's been an awesome blessing. So thanks, guys. And I know you're going to do great with these regulations. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we're leaving it in great hands. So until next time.
Thank you, Doran. I guess I will close this. I guess the one thing I do want to share that's a cool development in Central Virginia is Maggie Walker diversity has been an issue for such a long time, and I found documents and files from like a study they had from 10 years ago, and it's been an issue, and it's been fun to work as a region to find ways to address that. We were looking at the state, and I was part of the Secretary Carney's group last summer that was investigating this, and I shared some of the work that we were doing regionally with, trying to find a way to address it. And we found that the way we were selecting students was contributing to the lack of diversity. When you have a large division, you have so many middle schools, you just do things the way you've always been doing them without questioning, you start to realize that you could do things better. And Chesterfield County this year went from a division-wide selection to a school-based selection, so that every school got a certain number of slots at Maggie Walker proportional to their 8th grade enrollment. And then the top students in the school were able to be accepted at Maggie Walker for that opportunity. In Chesterfield County, we selected our most diverse population to go to Maggie Walker in the data that we have had. And I would venture to say that we've had ever, but I don't have the data to support that statement. But at least from the last 4 years, and that's extraordinary. And I think that in the midst of a pandemic, for something like that to happen is very cool. I think that it wasn't just the selection. I think there were a lot of things that were also different. We went to an online application process so that students could have access to the application and to those resources. And I wanted to share that because it's something that's big, that like we are working as a region to really combat an issue that has existed. And instead of talking about it as a region, we're trying to do something about it, which is very cool. We're excited. We're excited to see that trend continue, and for more divisions to really look and examine ways that we can work together to increase the diversity at Maggie Walker Governor School. So I did want to share that because that was such a coordinated effort in the region. And it was coordinators coming together to do what was best for kids. And it was, let's work together to solve a problem. So I had to share that. It's cool news with that. And it's been said already, but I'll say it again. This is an amazing group of people. I have had such a fun time. I really have. I was thinking about it this morning because I'm very reflective, and sometimes, and pardon my wordiness, and if I go on too long, just cut me off. But I was just reflecting over the last 6 years. I'm not only just personal growth, I think I've had two or three kids added to my family during my term here. I was trying to think, was Zeke born yet? but I have evolved as an educator as a part of this committee, and mentored and just enjoyed the fellowship of experts in the field that are at the table. I was, went from classroom science teacher to member of the gift office to coordinator of Chesterfield County, and I had this amazing group of educators to brainstorm with and to talk about issues facing our state and to do real work. That was the cool part of it. And Donna, I am so thankful for your leadership in this, because in the last 6 years, we did so much. I remember when we were all dispersed out and we were doing site visits at schools and learning about equity and gifted to do a report, and we drafted that somehow. And it was amazing, and it's such an important document now that's available to school divisions based upon best practices in our state that this committee did. And the work on the gifted regulations, like we have the expertise at the table. And Donna, with your leadership, we were able to move those regulations leaps, forward based upon what is good for kids. And now this work with providing schools with the data and the ways to present that data in a way that they can use easily and efficiently to advocate for gifted kids. Like, that is just the logical next step. And I'm excited for those of you that are remaining on the committee, and the work that is ready to begin with that. I want to, Donna, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for giving us all the opportunity to be at the table for this amazing, just very cool work. It's been so much fun, and I will miss it immensely. If not the community and fellowship, the work that we do is meaningful and impacts so many kids. So I just had to say that because it was such a special time. I will remember this time for the rest of my career.
Great. Well, I thank all of y'all for sure, but you're not off the hook yet. So even though you might be stepping down, we're still going to reach out to you to have you look some things over, give us your feedback, because you've been involved in the regulation process and lots of things over the last 3 to 6 years. So we are going to reach back out to you just for you to give your 2 cents. So you're not quite off the hook yet, but anyway, thanks for everything that y'all have done. It's been a wonderful ride. And unless there's something else,
I think that is it. Oh my! So if we come to the,
we have to set dates for next year.
Oh yes, we do. Yep, set dates. Everybody, open up your calendar.
So typically we have something in the first part of October. And so for those of you who might be thinking of, consortium or VAG, please keep that in mind as we pick a date. But I would say the 1st or the 8th is usually our time frame, but the 8th is going to be, right next to a long weekend. So some people might actually take that day off. We could go with something like the 15th of October. How does that sound for those of you who are going to be with us? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. So October
I agree.
15th. And then typically we're in December next. So the 3rd or the 10th. And keep in mind, if we do this in person, you'll be, you know, heading this way. The 10th might give us a little bit more time between meetings. How does that work for people?
I like the 10th.
The 10th, okay.
And if we're in person, we can have cupcakes because that's the day before my birthday.
Oh,
Sorry, Sarah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Or you can bring your own cupcake to the Zoom. There we go.
If it's in person, I'm going to come as a public commenter and have a cupcake.
Yes, it can be a birthday party / meeting.
Or
It's a
we can
day
do-
after my birthday, so I'll bring the cupcakes.
Oh,
Not that I'll be there.
Or we might could do those donuts from Sugar Shack. I guess they're still in business. I haven't had a donut and I don't even know when. Not something I typically buy, but okay. Next, that puts us into kind of the February time frame. I can't believe we'll be in 2022. Wow. Melanie.
Yeah, don't rush us. Got to get through the next 2 months.
2022. Preferences in February.
would the 11th work?
Yeah, that'll work for me. Other people shaking their head, yes.
Sounds good.
February 11th. And then
I just want to say that y'all will be helping me get through another senior year of one of my sons. You guys kind of held my hand through the first one, getting my son into Virginia Tech and all of that. We're getting ready to do that again for 22. So thanks in advance.
my brother has triplets and he's been going through that with triplets.
We're moving my daughter to Sarah Lawrence College at the beginning of September. So she's our only child and she's going to New York, and I'm going to maybe lose my business a little bit. So at our October meeting, we might need some therapy for me.
I got you, Felicia. I got you. George and Kirsten were great for me, and Dorn.
I'm going to need some help.
All right, so April is a tricky time for me because it's usually, you know, pushed to get things done for summer residential. And so later April timeframe is better. And I'm just looking at when, I don't know when Easter is, but I can tell you when Passover is.
Easter is on the 17th.
The 17th. Okay.
So if we looked at maybe that following week of the 29th, is that too late? Friday the 29th?
I don't think that's too late. How does that look on other people's schedule?
Sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Because you want to keep in mind that a lot of school divisions either have spring break before or after Easter. So that makes sense.
What day? Could you repeat the date again? I'm sorry.
29th of April.
April 29th.
Thank you. And the February, I have 10/15, December 10, and what was February?
The 11th.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Wow. And I know I see Dara's daughter's graduating in May, and Dorn's son, did he graduate today?
Yesterday, the way the military is doing it, everything's online. So yesterday he graduated. I didn't get to see it yet. It will be posted at 4 o'clock Central Time because parents are not allowed to go near that place. And they made it very explicit to let us know. don't show up to the airport or nothing. But he called earlier this week, and I'm very proud of him. Very proud. So he's gonna be a sailor. Spoils a sailor.
Okay, great. Well, again, thanks to all who have served and are stepping down. And for those who are going to be with us next year, I look forward to working with you and moving everything forward. Hopefully the regulations as well as the annual report and some guidance documents. And with that, I hope you have a great weekend. I am looking forward to it.
Bye, you all. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna, for everything you do every single day. We need to get together for lunch.
Yeah, definitely. I might definitely have to go out that way just for a trip.
Come on. And I've got a sailboat, so we could be sailors with Dorn wants to come out. Yep.
Most definitely.
Yep. Sarah, you're more than welcome. George, you're more than welcome. Anybody's welcome. Take care, guys.
You too.
Where's your boat at?
Smith Mountain Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I believe we're going to have a field trip, everyone.
Arg.
Looks like ARG. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. That was very nice. Thanks, guys. You're the
Thanks,
best.
guys.